Welcome to Canticle, the world of the Sunlit Man. This is one of the most unique and uniquely dangerous planets in the entire Cosmere. It's a world overflowing with investiture that powers every aspect of life here, from the way the people live to the strange physics that are found on this planet. This is definitely one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous worlds we've seen in the entire Cosmere, although I think Threnody is more dangerous, and I was certainly hesitant about coming here. Canticle is home to one of the most dynamic examples of a world entirely shaped by access to investiture. It's a land where the sunlight melts the landscape every day, changing it completely. A land where investiture flows from the sky, causing accelerated growth in plants. It's a place where, to survive, all people and animals must be constantly on the move to outrun the sun.
This video will be sourcing information from the Sunlit Man as well as some words of Brandon. Understanding how this planet works and what's going on in terms of investiture is integral to the story of the book itself. I recommend you skip this video if you haven't read the book, because discovering how Canticle works is important to the plot of the story and the actions taken by the characters, more so than other books in the Cosmere. Canticle is a tiny planet with a thin atmosphere and rings. A planet as small as Canticle shouldn't be able to have rings, but it does. Furthermore, the gravity on Canticle is pretty close to that of Cosmere standard, which should be impossible for a planet of this size without some sort of exotic material. The core of the planet is impossibly dense, but this is most likely due to the core being heavily invested, allowing it to break some real-world physics.
Canticle orbits a highly invested star that beams down invested light onto the planet. Due to an interaction with the core of the planet, this sunlight melts the entire surface of the planet every day. Anyone caught in the sunlight is vaporized. Due to this, most people live on the dark side of the planet, which is still illuminated at night by the planet's ring system. Otherwise, I would be cooked and you wouldn't be able to see me. The sunlight melts the entire day side of the planet. However, certain features, geological features, remain the same. Highlands and mountains, for example, like where I am now, are generally in the same location that they were before they melted. However, the specifics of the landscape change day to day.
Another oddity about Canticle is that its rotation is opposite of what we expect to see on most planets. The sun rises in the west and sets in the east. Not only that, but its rotation is quite slow, even factoring in the size of the planet. It takes Canticle 10 hours to make a full rotation, according to the reckoning of time in most of the Cosmere. Interestingly enough, though, the Canticlites' clocks seem to run double, with a single rotation lasting 20 of their hours. Due to the fresh nature of the landscape, there are some striking, if temporary, geological features. The surface of the planet shortly after the sun passes quickly cools to form spires and towers of lava rock. There are also magma tubes and rocks that are described very similar to obsidian.
Some of the fresh landscape, before plants grow on it, is described as rolling and rippled, in a way that I imagine is similar to Pahoehoe lava that is found in other places. All of these features are frozen in time until the next rotation of the planet, because the landscape is so fresh that erosion, normal erosion with wind and water, doesn't have a chance to happen to the landscape.
To keep ahead of the sun, the people who live on the planet live in modular flying cities. They are constantly trying to harvest crops and outrun the sun.
Generally, these cities keep to safe corridors, lines of latitude that are unobstructed by mountains and highlands. Why do they keep to these safe corridors? Well, the engines that power the cities and keep them aloft rely on air as their main propellant. But due to the small atmosphere on this planet, once they get more than a couple hundreds of feet into the air, they don't have enough air to push their ships up. So even a mountain of 1,000 feet is a near impossible obstacle for these flying cities. If one of these cities does encounter an impassable feature, like a mountain or a highland that they can't get over, they're usually trapped in that location and will be taken by the sun.
1,000 feet? Like a single thousand? At first he assumed that the connection had stopped working, that he hadn't interpreted those words correctly. These people were stymied by a set of mountains that would barely be considered hills on his homeworld. He'd lived in a city over 15,000 feet in elevation back there. Canticle is home to a group of people called Canticleites. These people were originally from the planet Threnody, but made an exodus shortly after something called the Evil arrived. These people are similar to Threnodites in many ways, but do appear to have an ability that Threnodites don't have, at least so far as we know. They're able to draw some investiture in the form of heat from one another. This is done through physical touch and also through certain rituals and prayers.
This is a bit of a side note, but the prayer used for the forceful transfer of heat amongst the Canticleites reminds me a ton about the sacramental prayer from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint faith, which I might be reading too much into, but is unsurprising given Brandon's faith and his background. Let me read that for you, and much like the sacramental prayer, I will need a card. Blessed Adonalcium, accept this soul and reward them for their heat given. Bold one on the threshold of death, give me your dying heat, that I may bless those who still live.
Anyway, it's unclear whether all Threnodites can do this or if it's something exclusive to those from Canticle. I'm inclined to think that it's exclusive to those from the planet due to the fact that the planet itself is doing something very similar to what Canticleites do.
Can regular Threnodites from Threnody exchange heat like they do on Canticle?
Raffo.
The people of Canticle are always on the move, and they tend to stay on the dark side of the planet because otherwise they would be vaporized by the sun. Thankfully, the planet's rings do reflect some sunlight onto the dark side of the planet, making it not completely dark. Again, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see me here. It also beams down a couple of BEUs an hour, which is used by plants to grow at an accelerated rate.
Because the sunlight superheats and melts the planet, the change in pressure allows for frequent rainstorms to occur. This, along with a couple BEUs of investiture being reflected by the planet's rings, provide a magical source of energy for plants to grow. Recently formed valleys fill with plant life, and native fauna migrates to follow these rapidly growing forests. It provides a stark and temporary alien beauty.
This supercharged and accelerated plant growth is the only way the Canticlites have been able to survive long-term on the planet. What they do is they quickly plant seeds and come back around before the sun does to harvest their crops.
Following the sunset, there's a storm called the Great Maelstrom. This storm isn't your typical storm. It's an area of immense pressure changes that's host to large cyclones of fire. Generally, it's a good place to stay away from.
Like Threnodites, those on Canticle have a shadowy chunk of investiture tied to their soul, which could become a cognitive shadow called Shade when they die, given the proper circumstances. If you want to learn more about Ecology and Shades, I did do a video on that. There will be a card up there if you want to learn more.
However, due to some weirdness on Canticle that I'll talk about in a minute, new shades aren't often made on the planet. This is something of a silver lining for those on Canticle, because as their chorus says in the book, due to the size of the planet, it's possible that it would be overrun with shades very quickly. "We are not shades, we are the chorus of the people. But others," another said, pressing against the glass, "must be given to the sun. This is the sun's land. Do this not," the first said, "and shades will overrun the world. Such a small planet, they will take everything. They would rip and destroy you. As we would," another added, "if allowed, to taste the flesh of the living, to drink their heat. So sweet," another said, "so sweet," the first agreed.
Historically, those on Canticle have been sacrificed to the sun and not had really natural deaths. As a result of this, new shades aren't made very often. If someone does die and isn't given to the sun before they do, their soul and shade doesn't actually go into the reliquary with the chorus.
I wanted to know, and this is my question for Brandon, do the deceased that die on Canticle, do they return into this reliquary? Like, was the brother really there, or do they just die? Do they still become shades?
So they don't get to go to the reliquary. They actually die, and their investiture that would become a shade is instead turned into one of the sun hearts.
Sun hearts are key to the survival of those here on Canticle. Sun hearts are smooth, almost glassy-looking orange stone that glows when charged. Sun hearts can also be chipped away and divided, split into different chunks, with each chunk containing a fractional amount of the power. A full sun heart contains about 200 BEUs of power. This here is just a chip, a shard of one. The people here don't really have a use or value for aluminum, so I was not able to get a very favorable trade. But nonetheless, sun heart chunk. These sun hearts are used to power pretty much anything that needs power. The electric lights, the engines that power the cities, even their little vehicles that can detach from their cities. Sun hearts serve as an incredibly dense power source, which would be fantastic if the process to get them wasn't so sad. The way sun hearts are made is very strange. I mean just in like the mechanical terms. In actual cost to human life, it's very sad.
Sun hearts are made by leaving people out in the sun. They're basically the amber and residue left behind by someone's soul as it's torn to shreds by the sunlight and sucked into the planet's core. Anyone left in the sunlight will be vaporized and a sun heart left in their place. However, if that person wasn't at least a little invested to begin with, the sun heart created won't have any power in it. This is observed with the sun heart that was created from the Sunlit Man that had no power in it.
It's almost like the souls are melted down into a glassy and condensed form. The amount of investiture found in a sun heart far exceeds the amount of investiture found in a soul, even Threnodite souls. As Auxiliary mentions in the books, even on highly invested world, a soul only contains about 3 BEUs, but most fully charged sun hearts contain 200 BEUs. So where does this additional power come from? To explain why a sun heart gets charged and why a base level investiture is required for them to be created in the first place, we're going to have to talk about the interaction between the sunlight and the core of the planet.
The sun in this system is highly invested, and the planet's core is absorbing that power.
The entire planet is artificial. That's right, Canticle is the first confirmed example we have of a megastructure in the Cosmere.
So, what's up with Canticle? You've got like the sunlight, it appears to be invested, and then like the planet's core is like trying to suck it up and eat it all. Like, where does it go after it does that, and like what's with that?
Yeah, Canticle was built for a very specific purpose by a very powerful being in the Cosmere that I will someday get to. You're gonna see some more stuff like this. Basically megastructures that imitate planets or other sort of heavenly bodies.
And so it's not like some avatar of autonomy or something like that.
It's not an avatar of anything. It was built for a specific purpose.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just wait till I get to the grand apparatus. You're gonna love that. What was that voice that talked about a future Cosmere planet?
Who built it and for what purpose is unknown. The WOB suggests to me at least that it wasn't Adenalcium, but it certainly could be. But if not Adenalcium, then who? A shard? Another being? A society? I don't know.
What's happening here is that the core of the planet is sucking in the investiture from the sunlight. Anything caught in the way, including the surface of the planet, provides some resistance, and a byproduct of that is intense heat. The sunlight itself isn't what's causing that incredible heat, but the resistance between the power and the core. That's why when Nomad touches the sunlight high above the ground, it doesn't vaporize him.
Additionally, when Nomad is withstanding the Great Maelstrom, he says that he feels something try to take his investiture, almost as if it wants it. Could the megastructure be sentient to some degree? And how long has it been guzzling up investiture from the sun? For what reason? Where is it going?
The ground was drawing in the heat, he was sure of it. As with the last flutters of his nerves, he could feel something trying to draw his investiture away into the depths of the planet. It couldn't claim his, but it tried. The core of the planet fed on investiture like he did. Was that a clue to how all this worked? It helped explain how the dark side of the planet could exist. The weather patterns he'd expected to consume everything were somehow quieted and stilled by this rapid cooling, creating a barrier between the dark side and the light side. It's described in the book like how an incandescent light bulb works. A current of electricity is forced through something that resists, generating heat and light. This is seen in Sunlit Man chapter 45. This appears to be some sort of magical version of Joule heating, a phenomenon where an electric current travels through resistance and generates light and heat. A charged sun heart is made when a soul with enough investiture provides sufficient resistance to the current of investiture that's being pulled in by the planet. If the person wasn't invested, the sun heart made from their soul doesn't provide enough resistance and is just sucked into the core of the planet without leaving behind a charged sun heart.
This phenomenon explains why the surface of the planet burns and why a little bit of seed investiture is required to act as a bit of resistance to charge a sun heart. But it doesn't explain why exposure to this level of investiture forms essentially a glass soul. There's still a lot we don't know about this planet. We don't know who made it and for what reason. We also don't know why this reaction happens with souls and the high levels of investiture. That's just one of the other mysteries about this planet. We don't know who made it, what for, and why souls turn into sun hearts. How will the knowledge that sun hearts can be recharged change life on Canticle? They're not going to have to sacrifice their sick and elderly anymore, so when people die, there might be more shades. It's unlikely we'll see more from Canticle. I don't think Sanderson plans to write another story set on this location. We might have like Easter eggs and, some references to it, but I don't think we'll see much of what life is like in the future on this planet. But perhaps when we learn more about megastructures, we'll learn more about the purpose of Canticle. But for now, it's just one of the newest mysteries that we have to theorize about in the Cosmere. All right, I've got to get going. It's a little bit of a hike to the ship that brought me here, and I do not plan to be here when dawn comes. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and share it with all your friends who enjoy the Cosmere. And what do you think about megastructures in the Cosmere? What do you think we'll see in the future, and what's the purpose of the planet Canticle? Love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But yeah, I think that's all I got for you now. Till next time, guys. Bye.